There are literally hundreds of missing children in Nigeria on a daily basis. This one story stands out amongst the rest. It is the story of Chidozie Emenahi, a young autistic boy who was lost and then found. We get to hear the story from his mother, but first, this report by Chidozie.
Say she who wears the shoe knows where it pinches. This speaks to identification. But what of empathy? There are some experiences we would never get to have, but by gaining it through a remote appreciation of what it feels like, surely through this we would emerge the better for it. It was a lazy Sunday morning with little on the schedule besides breakfast and virtual church. I received a message from two friends on my network, alerting me to the urgent need to broadcast the case of a missing boy, Chidozie Emenahi. He didn't look older than 12 years old, and he was on the autism spectrum. Some may be able to identify with the condition of autism. Perhaps they have a relative or friend who has been diagnosed with the condition. However, many haven't the foggiest when it comes to autism and its characteristics. Some even think such people are mad and in need of deliverance. As a parent with children on the spectrum, to get involved in Chidozie's story was a no-brainer. However, I was reminded by people close to me that missing children was a more than common occurrence in Nigeria, especially in the Northeast, which has now suffered a decade of conflict with almost 22,000 people being registered as missing with the ICRC. But this was a special child, I thought, and I could immediately identify with the mother. However, what I was to discover as the story unfolded stretched me emotionally and even blew my mind. Suffice it to say, it is a remarkable story of victory snatched from the jaws of danger and possibly death. It is a reminder that though he who wears the shoe knows where it pinches, yet it surely takes a whole village to raise a child. Chidozie, Arise News.
Now let's join Ifeoma Emenahi and her special son to hear directly from them on what the past couple of weeks have been like. Ifeoma, thank you so much for joining us. I can only imagine what you and your family have gone through. Walk us through it as best as you can, from when your son was missing to when you eventually found him.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Mrs. Ifeoma Emenahi. I'm a mother of 4. This is actually my first child. This is Chidozie Emenahi. Chido, can you say hello to everyone? Say hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Okay, so he was missing on the 9th of January. He was in the house. Funny enough, we came back from church. I went upstairs to sleep. And eventually the brother came upstairs and told me that the elder brother was not around. So I had to quickly go outside the gate. I checked. I found out he was not there. I went down to the security gate in the estate. They told me that they saw my child, but first of all, he went to a nearby place and he came out. So immediately I rushed up with my husband. I and my husband went to First Stack Police Station. We told them about it, and while we were coming out, there was actually someone who told us that they had seen that particular face past them. So I and my husband walked closer. We crossed the other road on First Stack and asked the old woman, and she said, yes, we saw your child. And when she said that, my husband kept investigating and found out that people actually saw this boy in the market, Aboju Market, when he took a bottle of Coke. And the reason why they said they couldn't hold him was that they were scared because they didn't know if they were going to arrest them. So eventually, when we found out that they couldn't allow us write any report at that day because they said it should be up to 24 hours, we had to go back home, and we came back the next day to lay a complaint. And when we did that, my husband and I, we had to put heads together. We had the social medias and all that, First Stack Online. We kept tweeting and telling people that this child is autistic, he's 13 years old. We had to create flyers and started pushing it up on social media. And that was when people started telling us they saw my child at Alakija and all that. We kept looking for this child. Even funny enough, a lot of people kept calling, asking us questions. Madam, I saw this child, but one of the questions people kept asking was, Madam, this boy was going, we didn't know that he could not talk. You know, one of the challenges I notice a lot of us face in Nigeria today is that the enlightenment for autistic children is not there. They're actually normal like you and I. And one of the challenges these children usually face is communication. Like if you'd ask him his name, he will tell you. If you ask him how old he is, he will tell you. But when it gets to the main conversation, that is where the problem is. So I kept telling people he had communication skills problem, and they kept saying, but he was walking normal, we didn't know something was wrong with him. So we kept enlightening people, telling people about it, and eventually on Sunday he was found by a woman who found out that she dropped her child at Abara to school in the boarding house. She said while she was coming back, she found that the child was running straight. And she had to tell the busman to stop. Yeah. And when the busman stopped, she said she quickly rushed to the boy, but the boy kept running.
Okay, it's a very interesting story you're telling us, Mrs. Emenahi. It's a very interesting story, but the question will be, what do we need to do to engage Nigerians to understand the challenges for autistic children? Because there are quite a few of them around, but the understanding in terms of what their needs are, because these are special needs, what those needs are, is just not there. What do we need to do to be able to enlighten Nigerians to understand what these needs are?
Number one, like I said, an autistic child, he or she looks like you and I. And the first thing usually I would advise every Nigerian to do is, one, when you see a child on the road and you notice that that person or he or she is walking on the road, please, if you notice their behavioral pattern, because autistic children are usually hyper. But for my son, the more he's growing, the more he tends to be calm. But one of the things I would tell Nigerians is that they should understand that these children have communication skills. They can't communicate properly. Some of them are extremely hyper. And I would also encourage mothers out there like me who have such children to tell their neighbors around in case they find their children around, so that they can help them out. Because around the mainland here, a lot of parents don't even know that these children are normal like you and I. So at times when you tell them that this child is autistic, they don't even know. They think the child is mad. But when you start communicating with this child, you find out that he has communication skills problem and he has behavioral pattern, which is his hyperactive, you know. So those are the things I think I would encourage Nigerians. They should be enlightened about it, because they should create a forum.
Very quickly, Ifeoma, because we don't have much time. Are you able to tell us that this is typical of children living with autism in terms of, you know, going missing and all of that, that is a major challenge? And what are the other challenges, very quickly, that you can help us identify in others?
Oh. Okay, for some of them, like I said, growing up, some of them, if you do not detect it early, you find out that such children becomes a burden. Like I said, some of them can be extremely hyper. So when you see them in church, they roam about, they don't sit one place, they get very aggressive. But when you are able to tame them properly, by always, one of the basic things an autistic child needs is love. When you're always there for that child, you always teach, and number one is that the parents should always have time for them, because at times parents think it's only the therapist that should do more. No, the mom or dad needs a lot of work to do with these children, because you need to always dedicate your time for them. If you don't do that, they become a burden in future for you.
Indeed.
So,
indeed.
The final thing we'd like to find out from you is, where did you eventually find this young man?
We found him at Abara, Ogun State. That was actually where we found him.
In Ogun State, was he in a good condition? He wasn't kidnapped? There was no harm done to him?
When we found him, he had a swollen leg though, and he had just few little injuries on his knee. He wasn't wearing his trousers like when he left the house, but he was still wearing his shirts. So when we found him, he was really looking like a destitute, you know, because he had not had his bath for 7 days. He left on Sunday and he came back on Sunday.
I know you say that a typical challenge is communication skills. Can he say a word or two to us apart from telling us his name?
I didn't get that.
I'm wondering if he can say a word or two, just say something maybe to his fellow autistic children. I would like to hear something from him before we let you go.
Okay, Chido, so would you tell the viewers what's your name? What's your name? How old are you?
I'm 30 years old.
Okay, so what are the names of your brothers? Good boy.
As we brought to you earlier, we're discussing with, well, a mother of an autistic child who gave us her personal experience about her young Chidozie Emenahi, that autistic boy who was lost and then found. Actually, he does stand out amongst the rest, according to the mom. Now, let's bring in Daisy Jonathan, proprietress of Pleasant Places, a special school, Lagos and Port Harcourt, to delve further into the issues. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, Daisy, following that moving story, which thankfully had a happy ending, how common is the occurrence of special children going missing?
In Nigeria, we really do not have so much in terms of data, and that's because a lot of children who go missing are not actually formally reported. And we also have a challenge that a lot of children do not really have a proper diagnosis, so it's also very difficult to say how many persons with intellectual or neurological disabilities or disorders get missing every year. However, at the global scene, it's generally known that at least 50% of persons on the autism spectrum would get missing at one time or the other during their childhood.
Know about children with autism so that they can support the parents. In fact, members of the extended family sometimes are ignorant about what it means to be on the spectrum.
True.
So you heard me. I was just saying that what do the public need to know about children with autism so they can be more supportive to parents, and within the community, if they see this child with autism walking around, they will know how to handle the situation. And I was just saying as well that even members of the extended family sometimes don't even understand what it means to be on the spectrum.
True. So first and foremost, elopement behavior, which is what occurs when a child goes missing, it's either the child has walked away from the house, has wandered off, or has eloped, is not only prevalent among children on the autism spectrum. So we see it amongst children generally with intellectual disabilities or disorders. But let's talk about autism because that's the case we have before us. First and foremost, it's important that we know what autism is and what it is not. It's very common that we have myths and misconceptions where people think that autism is, witchcraft, or it's madness, or the child is not able to do anything. It's not a child that we should care or bother about. Autism is a spectrum disorder. It ranges from mild to severe, and it's important that we know that although they may have, challenges across 3 major areas, we might have issues with communication. It's either they're not communicating properly or they're not communicating enough, or would have social skills, challenges or sensory issues or repetitive behaviors, as the case may be. So those are the manifestations we will see, but it differs from person to person. So for some children, like Chidozie, you could hear him use some words and speak. And for other individuals, you may have some who are non-verbal, who cannot communicate, and then you have those who are non-vocal, who are not able to use sounds at all or use words at all, to communicate and say what they mean or need. So it's important that people get to understand that, you know, there are so many children around who have this diagnosis and several other diagnoses. They're not children we should, you know, run away from. They're not children we should abandon. They're children we should look out for. And their parents do need, you know, care. They need support. They need help to look out for these children so that they remain safe and then they become functional adults.
And you run a special needs school. Help us understand what it is like teaching these kids and what needs to be done to ensure that you know, they're not left out, that they are, you know, they live a normal as possible a life that they can. What needs to be provided for them to give them that seeming normality or normalcy?
Okay, so I work with children generally, so I run a school. There is a sector, definitely, that works with children with special needs. So I will tell you that children are children, whether they have needs or they don't have needs, whether there's a diagnosis or not a diagnosis. What every child would need is what children with special needs need. They need love, they need to be understood, they need care, they need support, they need, you know, your empathy. But we do know that they need a little bit of extra special care, you know. When we say extra special care, it's just a bit more patience, you know, to teach them what they need to teach, using the right strategies. You know, some of them, a lot of them are actually quite visual. They're visual learners, so we may want to put things in the visual forms. Teachers may need to, you know, break down the steps. Now, it's interesting to know that quite a number of children on the autism spectrum have, you know, above average IQs. So it's not always that a child on the autism spectrum needs things to be broken down. They may actually function higher than the, you know, the regular child in the classroom. So we may have some who are what we call autistic savants, you know, who have very high IQs, who are very intelligent, who are gifted, you know, and so we need to work with them at that level. And for those who do not work at that level too, we need to come down and take them up, you know, up the ladder. However, it's very important that educators, that parents know that these children can be taught, they can become functional, they can become independent children.
Daisy, Jonathan, thank you very much. You're the CEO of Pleasant Places. We do appreciate the great work you're doing in the community, and we pray that you continue to have
success so much.
With our children with special needs. Thank you very much, Daisy, Jonathan.